All right. Thanks so much for coming to our webinar tonight. This is on improving parent coping and self-care. I am Mandi White-Ajmani, the owner of Small Brooklyn Psychology. We are a group psychotherapy practice, psychology practice, because we do both therapy and neuropsych assessment. We're located at Industry City in Brooklyn, New York. And we provide services to people of all ages, all backgrounds, and all psychological concerns. So you can see our clinicians there at the bottom of the screen there. Um, Dr. Sam Jeannite obviously is here. He's going to be leading this talk in a few minutes, but there's also me, Dr. Natasha Brown, Jill DePietro, there's Sam, Dr. Deidre Edwards, Dr. Nav Gill, and Maddie Lawler. And we all have great experience working with people across the lifespan, but we also have special training and experience to work with children and parents, including assessments and parent work for babies. So this is the 6th webinar in our monthly series. Recordings to our previous talks are on our website at smallbrooklyn.com/services/talks. You can see all of those previous recordings. And this series is actually media sponsored by Park Slope Parents, which is our tremendous community resource with tons and tons of advice lists and subgroups for different concerns, career groups, meetups, and they also sponsor great informative talks like this. So thank you so much to them as always. And then also Premier Pediatrics, which is a New York-based pediatrician practice with locations in Manhattan and Brooklyn and the Rockaways. So thanks to both of them. Stay tuned. Our next webinar next month will actually be the last in our series. It's going to be on May 12th and will be done by Dr. Natasha Brown, one of our neuropsychologists. She's going to be talking about 3 of our most common diagnoses: ADHD, autism, and anxiety. And she's going to talk about how they're similar and how they're different. So that will be our next talk. And for everyone who is watching this talk tonight, you will get this presentation. You will get a link to our previous talks. You will get the registration link for the next talk if you would like, as well as a recording of this talk. So you'll get all that in your email tomorrow. So don't feel like you have to quickly write anything down, but please feel free to join us on that too. As I'm going to turn over to Sam in just a couple of minutes, but as the talk is going on, if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box. That is something that I will be monitoring throughout. Sam will be talking, and Sam, feel free to ignore the questions. I know they're distracting while you talk. But at the end, when the presentation is over, we'll have a session for question and answer. I'll come back on and I will ask some of those things, as well as some of the questions that you guys put into your registration boxes as well. So just to introduce Dr. Sam Jeannite. He is a licensed New York State clinical psychologist. He completed his doctorate in school psych and clinical child psych at Pace University. He's previously worked at Nassau University Medical Center, Mercy First Residential Treatment Facility, and most recently at the League Education and Day Treatment Center. And luckily for us, he's with us full time now. Thank you so much, Sam. We're just so glad to have all of you. He has extensive experience in working with people of all ages and a wide range of difficulties like complex trauma, anxiety, depression, developmental disorders, poor emotion regulation, behavior disorders, ADHD, poor social skills, executive functioning difficulties. So he can do it all. He's also an adjunct professor at Pace University, and he's actually a published children's author too, author and illustrator. His first 2 books are Ella Has a Super Important Question and I Don't Need Sheep to Sleep. And they're both available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So Sam, take it away. Tell us about how to cope. We are all parents here and we all need to know.
Hi, Mandi. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here, and I'm really excited to have this talk with you. So, as you know, the title of this presentation is Improving Parent Coping and Self-Care. I wanted to start off with a little bit about myself. I'm a relatively new parent. My daughter is about 1.5 years old. I love her to death. Like, it's awesome when I come home and she's like, "Hi, Daddy," and all these other things, and it's amazing. But she always has had a lot of difficulty with sleep. So I would go stretches of weeks where everything is fine, and then I would go a week or two and not be able to sleep at night. And in this particular situation, I remember, I think there was a lot going on in my life at the time. And on top of it, she was going through, she was teething. So every night she was waking up 2 or 3 times a night. And the first night I was okay, I was fine, I was fine, and I was able to handle it. But Monday, Tuesday, whether by Thursday or Friday night, I had enough. I was tired. I was frustrated. I just felt like I couldn't handle it anymore. And I remember I just put her to sleep, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I said, "All right, she's knocked out. I made sure I gave her everything. I changed everything she needed, and then I put her down. And then all of a sudden, literally an hour later, she started crying, and I literally felt this visceral, I don't know what to call it, anger, pain, whatever it was, to the point where my wife was just like, "What is going on with you? Are you okay?" And I'm like, I'm just super angry right now. I'm really just frustrated. And I'm in that moment, I felt anxious. I felt guilty. I felt so bad because it's not her fault. She's a baby. She's teething. And yet here I am getting so angry in that moment. And I realized that I wasn't really taking care of myself, and I hadn't had time to really sleep because of everything that was happening. And so I wanted to share that, because if you don't find ways to kind of begin to curb that and curb those thoughts and those feelings, then those thoughts and feelings and all those beliefs about how you need to be as a parent starts to really grate on you. And one of the things that I want to talk about is these common parenting beliefs that we all have. And I'm going to go through some of them here, but there are a ton more beliefs, especially when you start talking about culture and expectations and what you want and how you were raised and how you expect things to be in your life and how you want things to be versus how things are. So, one of the things that comes up is I must give 100% every day, no matter what. And oftentimes that means you need to be perfect, that things need to go a certain way. Everything needs to be in order. And if things are not in order, it starts to kind of grate on your nerves. The success or failure of my children depends entirely on me. So I remember, for example, I said to myself, she's always had trouble sleeping in one form or another. And I kept thinking to myself, I must be doing something wrong. I must be, I'm a psychologist. I should know at least something. And yet I'm struggling with this on a regular basis. So now I keep thinking to myself, I'm a failure. I can't get my kid to sleep at night the way I need her to sleep. Uh, when we start to look at society as good, and I will be seen by society as a good an honorable person because of the effort I put into being a good parent. We kind of worry about how other people view us. We worry about how family views us, how people, our friends view us. Sometimes we even create this illusion as if everything is under control. Everything is wonderful. Everything is great, because you do not want other people to see those expectations, to see you in a state of vulnerability. My need for rest and recreation should be sacrificed in order to help my children. Oftentimes, we have the idea of sacrifice. Yes, of course, we do sacrifice for our children, but oftentimes we think to ourselves, we don't deserve to rest. We don't deserve to have fun. And if we're having fun, that's a problem. If we're having fun or doing things that we enjoy doing, that means we're not taking care of our child. And oftentimes, those expectations that we put on ourselves becomes extremely harmful. And it just makes it harder for us to really be able to comprehend to comprehend how to just be calm and be in a space and manage our emotions. I should do everything for my child and not require that they take on the responsibilities that they are old enough to handle. And oftentimes it goes back to a lot of different things. It might go back to how you were raised. It might go back to the idea of perfectionism in the sense that, oh, things have to be a certain way. So if I don't do it, it's not going to get done, or it's not going to get done the way I need it to be done. And oftentimes we need to stop focusing so much on being perfect and start focusing on what can we do to help our children learn different skills, right? So if you need them to help you do chores and other things, yes, bring them along. Yes, your child will probably do things that you do not want them to do, but that's part of the process, because in the same time they're learning skills, they're learning how to do certain things, they're learning to help you, they're learning to work together with the family as a team. And when you start to include them in the things that you're doing, it builds up their confidence, and it helps eventually, not right now, because oftentimes it's a process and we're trying to scaffold, but eventually you might get to a place where that child might say, you know what, mommy, I can put the shoes away, or mommy, I can put toys away, or I can do these things. And maybe they don't want to do it all the time, but when you need them to do it, they will be able to help you. And that's a process that you can begin to work towards. I should spend every possible moment with my children. I love my daughter. She's amazing. But my wife works and I do have a day off. Oftentimes I find myself waking up at 6 something in the morning, and it's 6 something in the afternoon, and I have been with her all day, watching Elmo, dancing, walking, trying to sneak naps, everything else that I can do. And then when I try to put her down for a nap, if I'm successful, then I'll have another hour or so to myself. But if sometimes I'm not successful and she immediately says, no, daddy, the nap has to be on top on you. And now it becomes a whole thing. So after a certain amount of time, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I just need a moment. I need to be away. I need to shower. I need to do other things so that way I could focus on me for that time. Another belief that we have is I should feel guilty if I need a break or want some attention for myself. There now, these are beliefs that we have, right? You shouldn't feel guilty, of course, that you need a break. But oftentimes, because we have it in ourselves that we need to be perfect, this is a belief that we harbor. So when we do take a break, you can't really even be happy with that break. It's like trying to go to sleep and realize you're having bad dreams because that you shouldn't be asleep. It doesn't work. And other people must see me as a good parent, able to handle everything. And again, you kind of create this facade or cloak as if everything is okay. And so everybody looks at you and says, you have it under control. You're Mr. or Mrs. Wonderful, or all these different things about you. And yes, while that does make you feel good, you know that you're struggling. And when you're struggling, but then everybody thinks you're okay, then you become more reluctant to ask for help. Who would want to help the person who has everything perfect? That's what you might think to yourself, but those things are not really helpful to you. So when we have those common parenting beliefs, we need to become aware. And this is why I'm going through each of these beliefs, because I want you to begin to identify what type of parenting beliefs that you have internalized within you. What kind of beliefs kind of play a role in how you interact with yourself, how you interact with your children, how you interact with your partner, how you might look upon your partner in regards to how they handle a problem versus how you would handle a problem. All those things need to be addressed. One role, another thing is one role in my life can satisfy all my needs and can support all my dreams. And as we know, parenting is a wonderful role that you have, but that's not all you are. You are a parent, you are a mother, a brother, the wife, a husband, all these different things. So that one role is one role, and it's a significant role, but it is not the only role. So you need to be aware of that and try to make time for those other roles when you do have the ability to. My children should appreciate everything I do for them. That's another big one. Oftentimes we expect our children, and also my children must like me. Your kids will eventually say, hey, mommy, I hate you. Daddy, I hate you. I can't believe you did this. And while those words hurt in that moment, I'm sure as children ourselves and as teenagers, we've had those moments, whether we thought we could say it out loud or not. We've had those moments where there was a lot of friction between ourselves and our parents. And oftentimes that friction shouldn't be the reason why now you need to be on top of your child. You need to figure out what the problem is in that moment. You need to, this is where you need to give things a little bit more space. You need to take your time to understand what's going on and give yourself room. Sometimes, you know, my children should appreciate everything I do for them. Yes, they should, but as we know, our kids don't always appreciate everything we do for them. Like my daughter she's 1.5. She expects that I do everything, and my wife do everything that we can for her. And she's, sometimes she'll say thank you every once in a while, but at this point, the only thing that we could go on is by a smile. And oftentimes our kids are not going to express that appreciation. So instead of focusing so much on that, start focusing on what you need to do as a parent, how you want to make sure that your kids develop into adults. Now, when we hold on to those negative common negative parental beliefs, it could lead to us having a lot of difficulty coping. It could lead to a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety. When you couple that with work, I mean, of course, you have COVID-19 who came and like a brick and hurt everybody that we've known. And now we're trying to kind of figure out how to get things in order. And some of us, yes, are going to a better place where now some of our kids are back in school and some of the things that were in place and shut down are starting to open up. But there are many of us who still have to stay home, who kids are still in Zoom school. And then now you're not only the parent, you're the teacher, you have to do all these different, you're the entertainer, you have to do all these different things for your children. And then that can lead to parental burnout. And parental burnout is defined as a state of intense exhaustion related to one's parental role, in which one becomes emotionally detached from one's children and doubtful of one's capacity to be a good parent. One of those key components is that emotional detachment, right? Not only is that doubt there, but an emotional detachment occurs where now you start to freak out. You start to feel like I can't draw out the love that I need for my children. I can't right now, anything that they say gets me angry. Anything that my partner says gets me angry. I don't feel like I have any control. I just need time to myself. And when we talk about burnout, I'm like, when at a job, when you have burnout, you could say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to start looking for another job. Then you start to fantasize about other jobs and other places that you could potentially be. But when you're a parent, you can't apply for another parenting job. You are the parent to your child, which means but you start to have that escapism fantasy. So you have thoughts of either running away or doing things away from your children or being away from your kids, which may scare you, which may make you feel like, oh my God, I'm a really horrible parent. What type of parent would have these feelings? You start to develop shame, guilt, self-hate, fear, and loneliness. And when you develop those things, it compounds. And even if you have a partner that's helping you or whatnot, it's hard to kind of to break that feeling. So oftentimes you kind of really focus on that. You feel as if you can't get anything right. You feel as if, like myself, for that week when my daughter was just not sleeping and I was tired and everything happened, I felt like there was nothing I can do. I was just so frustrated and angry. Sleep disorder, and you could think of any type of sleep disorder, that you won't be able to sleep well at night. You're not only are you stressed out, you're anxious, or you're developing depression and parental burnout. Sleeping is not really coming to you that easily, or you might sleep way too much, and then now you're not really being attentive when you need to be attentive. And all those things are important. Then it also adds to marital conflict. Oftentimes you kind of look at your partners, start looking at, well, you're not doing enough of this. If you only would do this, or if you only would do that, things would be okay. Or partner estrangement, when you start to think about other partners and maybe I shouldn't be in this situation, and other extreme forms of that. The lack of responsiveness to the children is a big thing that not only just affects you, but it affects your children. When you're that angry, when you're that frustrated, when you are beginning to withdraw, all those things, that your child notices those things. There is in psychology classes, if you've ever taken some or been in a psychology class, typically they'll show a video, and in that video they'll show a parent and a young infant, I don't know how many months, maybe 3 or 4 months, old enough to smile and look at you and kind of get eye contact, and the researcher would have the parent in for a couple minutes keep a straight face. And as you're watching the baby's trying to engage. They're trying to get you to laugh. They're trying to get you to talk to them. They're cooing and they're smiling and they open their eyes and do all these awesome things. And in that moment, as a parent who's just doing this experiment, you might think to myself, "Oh my God, she's so cute, or he's so cute. I can't wait to hold them." But in that moment, you're keeping a straight face, and over time, you start to notice that the baby actually started to feel distressed because of the way you are reacting, the way your body is responding. Because in that moment you are not responding to them. So then it went from being happy to actually crying and being upset. And then as soon as the mom started interacting with the child, oh my God, the baby calmed down and lit up and was happy and excited, and all those things happened. So that's a really powerful thing to observe in a video, but it's a really powerful thing to understand. Even if our children get older, when we get to a place when we can't even be responsive, it affects them just as much as it affects you. And then oftentimes yelling and responding in an aggressive way, those are things that do happen. When you get to that space, you'll snap, you'll say things that you typically won't, you'll do things that you typically want, and you have to be aware of that, and unaware of how that affects you and might potentially affect your child. So one of those things that after we've gone through all of that, and we're stressed out and we're depressed and we feel guilty and shameful, and we feel as if we have no control, we need to start with the process of shifting our perspective, which is not an easy thing. In cognitive behavioral psychology, we look at this nifty triangle here called the cognitive triangle. And basically how it goes is your thoughts and your emotions and your behavior are all interconnected. That's why we have those nifty arrows going back and forth, right? They're all interconnected. Your thoughts affect your feelings and your action. Your emotions affect your thinking and what you do, and your behaviors affect how you think and how you feel. And that's really important to understand. It's really important to understand the cycle, because once you start to understand the cycle, we could potentially start to understand, how do we get into that cycle? How do we start to shift that? So for example, thoughts. I really let my kids down. I am not a good parent. So your emotion, I feel bad, I feel guilty, I feel shameful, I might even be angry at myself, I feel sad. All those emotions are there. As a result, you have your behavior. I withdraw. I'm going to withdraw from them. I'm not going to really talk to them. I'm going to give one word answers. I'm not going to be there. But in that moment of withdrawal, now you start to think to yourself, oh my God, I really am a horrible parent. So guess what? It goes back to your thoughts. I'm never gonna get anything right. They're never gonna love me. I'm never gonna figure out this situation. Your emotions are gonna get worse, and it kind of causes this kind of feedback loop where it just goes round and round and round. So all those things are interconnected. So part of shifting your perspective is being aware of, like, okay, if I'm having a hard time addressing my thoughts, I need to start addressing my emotions. I need to find healthy things. Because there are things that we can do that are not healthy that could make us feel better. That's why some people stress eat. That's why some people might resort to substance abuse. Because in the moment, it makes you feel better. It makes you feel great if you have that piece of cake, or it makes you feel great if you start drinking wine. But when you start to do it over and over and over, those unhealthy habits start to kind of become part of that cycle. And then now it increases those negative thoughts, increases those negative emotions. So when we start to talk about breaking that cycle, we're talking about healthy ways to break that cycle. How do we address your emotions in a healthy manner? How do we address our behaviors in a healthy manner? How do we do things like taking walks outside, doing fun things with our children, or even challenging negative thought processes, just like the way we talked about those common beliefs, that we talked about earlier. How do we even begin to challenge those common beliefs when they're there? So strategies for parental burnout. And hopefully you didn't think that was just going to stop there and say, all right, this is how you do it. There's more to it, right? And some of these things you'll know, but there's some of these parts of the strategies that you really need to be active in doing. So for example, try not to focus on love, affection, approval from children's needs rather than bonuses and approval from children's needs. Basically, stop focusing so much as I need this for my child. I have to have this for my child. Right now, yes, your children do love you. But in that moment, when you are trying to be a parent, let's say you're trying to discipline and they're unhappy with you and they don't want to talk to you, in that moment, looking for that is not going to be helpful. Work on I'm doing what I'm doing because I am the parent. I need to do these things in order to make sure my child learns these rules or or learn what they need to learn in order to be productive people in society. Learn ways to boost your self-confidence. One of the things that my wife does is she told me a couple months ago that she wanted to start going and getting her nails and her toenails done. Mani, petty, everything. So I said, do it whenever you have a moment. I will take the baby, go and have a couple hours and do it. And when she came back home, she felt great. She was like, oh my God, I feel like a human being. I feel amazing. Look at my fingernails. Don't you like the color? I look amazing. All these things. And I was like, great. Because I know that if she feels good, she's going to feel like she can handle the hard things. She's going to feel like she could, be around my daughter. And then she also makes time for me. She says, you know what? You need to go do X, Y, and Z. Go take a nap. Go play some video games. I'm giving you the space you need in order to make sure that you are able to do what you need in order to help yourself feel better. Okay? See the positive side of stress. And yes, there is a positive side of stress. So, for example, stress could feel as if you might look at stress and say, oh my God, stress is horrible. I don't want stress. I don't want to deal with stress. Oftentimes, stress can be useful. Stress could tell you if there's a problem. Stress could tell you, hey, I need to solve this. Stress could be even positive in regards to making sure that you get certain things done in your life. So when you look at the positive side of stress, oftentimes I like to look at stress as, oh, I feel stressful about this problem or this situation. There must be a problem. There must be something that's causing me stress that once I figure it out, hopefully it'll help me feel better. So when I look at stress, I kind of look at it almost as an indicator of like, here are the problem areas. Here are the things that scare me. Here are the things that make me feel as if I do not have control. So once I start to see those things, once I start to kind of not just be in this stressful ball, but kind of take the stress, look at it and say, where is this stress coming from? Then I could start to tackle those problems. Another thing is understand anger and use it constructively. Constructively use your anger by controlling your wishes. Oftentimes we have all these wishes and we have all these expectations, but if we try to understand our anger and we use it constructively, we're able to direct that anger. Oftentimes people think anger is a horrible thing. I need to control my anger. And while that might be useful, when a person who controls their anger is able to direct it towards a positive goal. If I'm angry about the fact that my daughter's not sleeping well, then I need to start sitting down with my wife and figuring out what do I need to do to learn more so I can help her sleep. What do we need to do to change her current structure or current schedule in terms of sleeping? Maybe we need to make her sleep earlier. Maybe we need to make her have more structured naps. We need to figure out a way to help her with her sleep. So by figuring out and kind of directing it, we can better be constructive in that situation or even address problems. Practice positive thinking daily with affirmations. Write them down and put them around the house, which is something I tell all my clients is, especially when we're talking about anxiety, depression, or anything else, I tell them to write down positive things. Write down positive things about yourself. Write down positive things about your partner. Write down positive things about your child. Write down goals. all those things and put them up in a certain place. Sometimes put them up on a mirror and then read them from time to time, especially when you're not feeling great. And this is where it's hard, because it's one thing to do it when you're calm and you're relaxed and you're reading all these wonderful things that you wrote. But when you're upset and unhappy, that's when the deep breathing and all the meditation, that's when it gets the hardest. Because in that moment, you're like really pissed off, and then you're trying to tell yourself, just breathe. And you're like, and you're trying to breathe, but then now you're like, well, now you need to exhale, but then you're so angry you refuse to exhale. So in that moment, when you practice deep breathing and all those different exercises, what you're doing is that you're preparing yourself for when you do become angry or when you do become frustrated, that you can actively use these skills in a meaningful fashion. And when you do that, you'd be surprised. You know, it's funny. I work with a lot of people, and then when I do go over some of these relaxation and other skills, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I know how to do that. I know how to do that." And then finally something happens that kind of either spikes up their anxiety or frustration or whatever it is, and they say, "Oh my God, it actually worked." I typically would have went off on a tirade and all these other things would have happened. But then when I started breathing, and it was hard initially, but then when I started breathing and started doing all the exercises that we've gone over, all of a sudden I was able to have a little bit more control. And that's all I needed. I just needed a little bit more control so that way I could feel better. Um, develop a support system, get help. Oftentimes, especially taking care of young kids, you need help. Before I became a parent, I was under some sort of delusion that I could actually, like, this is easy. My wife is like, we want 5 children and we're throwing out 7 children. And we're like, yes, we can do all these wonderful things. And then my one child has put me through I love her to death, but puts me through the ringer. And I said to myself, I was like, wow, I need help. This is a lot harder than it looks. So then I've gone to other people in my family for help. I've asked my family members whenever they have a moment, every once in a while, to come and take care of her so that I could go on a date night and do all these awesome things. So that way I don't always feel as if we're stuck in the same place over. I was able to find a place where I could feel calm and feel safe, and also be able to do the things that I feel calm and safe by getting help from my family members and other people in my life that I trust. Learn to tolerate change. Children change all the time, you know, and like I said, I keep going back to my daughter and her sleeping. I always think I have it down pat, and then all of a sudden, a month and a half later, something else comes up. Now she sleeps later. Now I need to figure out how to get her to sleep earlier, and all these other things. So children change all the time. So when children change, be aware that they change. Start working on, how do we deal with that? How do we help them manage that change? And how do we help ourselves manage that change? One of those things that we have to be aware of is we are the models for our children. Oftentimes we kind of act as if we're not, or you know, we have these moments, which is perfectly fine, where we're not our best, and that's okay. But typically we are the models for our children. So that means they see us when we're angry, they see us when we're anxious. So when they see us anxious or angry, they also need to see us calm down. They need to see us repair. They need to see us do all those other things, because those things are really important. Because they can't just see one aspect, they need to see the other aspect. They need to know, if I'm frustrated, this is how I should act when I'm frustrated. And if I did something wrong, this is how I should say sorry or should talk about it. You are not perfect, and there's no perfect decision. Oftentimes, we are in a weird, like, again, COVID-19, we're always in this weird decision making process where we need to figure out what we're doing for work, what are we doing for our children, should they go to school, should they stay home, should we take the vaccine. All these different decisions are coming up. You are not perfect, and there is no perfect decision. You just need to take your time, start to look at, okay, what is the most pressing issue now? And oftentimes, when that happens, our brains kind of say, well, we have 25 pressing issues. And I said, okay, but what is the most pressing issue now? What is the issue that we need to solve within the next day or two? and then you focus on that, and you start to kind of whittle down whatever problem that you need to whittle down slowly until you get to a place where you feel comfortable. But if we try to be perfect, if we try to say everything has to be a certain way, we start to kind of hurt ourselves and hurt our ability to actually do the best that we can. Learn to catch yourself when you say negative statements to yourself and challenge them. One of the big things is challenging negative thoughts. Oftentimes we have so many negative thoughts and we leave them unchallenged. We let them run wild. I'm not a good parent. And you let those negative thoughts run wild. We need to challenge those negative thoughts. We need to stop them in their tracks and say, hey, is that actually a true thought? Am I really a bad parent? I do all these wonderful things, and the only reason I consider myself a bad parent is because it, I forgot to clean the bottles before I went to sleep. And this is how, when you start to realize, like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't mean I'm a bad parent. It means I'm tired and I need to sleep. So when you start to challenge those thoughts, that negative thinking, you could find yourself being able to manage and manage your emotions and your behaviors in a better fashion. And then be healthily selfish. Free yourself from needing outside approval. Stop looking towards others to tell you how good of a parent you are. If you are doing what you should do as a parent, and you are actively trying to spend time with your children, not just give them whatever they want or whatever it is that you might think, but actually do positive parenting things, then stop looking for approval from the outside, because oftentimes that approval is part of the pressure that you might be feeling, and part of the pressure that might be causing a lot of that stress. And once you start to realize, like, listen, I'm going to do the best that I can, I'm going to make sure to teach them the best that I can, then you can start to kind of get to a better mental space. And when you're in a better mental space, everybody else around you can get to a better mental space. Um, and other self-care strategies: maintain structure. Socialize on Zoom. If you're not seeing people in person, socialize on Zoom, call a friend, do all those things. Really important. Like we said, shift your perspective. Therapy, meditation, combat negative and helpful thoughts, run, work out, do anything you can in order to get yourself to that space. It is not easy. Sometimes it's not comfortable. Sometimes you'll even get the time that you need and feel guilty for the time that you have. But in that time, take the time, cherish that time, use it, because then when you come back, you can be better. Oftentimes, when I think about doing things in a better fashion, or when I think about of solving problems, or if I have a project, or if I have things that I have to do, I don't always focus on I need to do it little by little, because that doesn't work for me. But what I know what works for me is when I could get myself to a good mental space, I could work very quickly and efficiently, and I could do a lot of things in that space. So when I get myself into that mental space, I say, I feel good, everybody's okay. Boom, let me go solve these problems. Let me go fix this problem. And I'm able to do it in that time period, because in that time period, I know, okay, I'm feeling good about myself. I'm feeling like I can get it done. So that's how I function. And that's how, because I have the self-awareness to understand that. So then part of what a goal that you're going to be looking for is to get to that place of self-awareness. Find a problem that you know you can solve right now. Prioritizing, like I said earlier, it's really important that you do that. Now, Winnicott is a psychologist from many, many years ago. Again, taking psychology classes, you know more about him. Basically, he came up with the concept of a good enough mother. But in actuality, we're looking at the idea of a good enough parent. Excessive norms and undue pressure would undermine many parents' capacity for self-confidence. Winnicott expressed that you can do your best, not everything for your child. You can't do everything. That's why it says good enough. You cannot be a perfect parent. It is not human possible to get everything perfect. That's what it is. But doing a good enough job means being able to relate positively to your child. How, do you spend time with your child? Do you, cuddle? Do you do things when it matters? Are you there when it matters? All those things are really important, and enjoy the time you spend together. It's really important that you do that, right? And I think with COVID-19, you've had to spend so much time with each other, and you have to get to know each other. Sometimes you might feel like you have to get to know each other even better, or get to know each other all over again. And the thing is that for some people, they find it a blessing. Other people, they find it difficult. But the idea is that you're spending time and you're making meaningful time with each other. So the last thing I wanted to say is fill your cup, right? Same thing, concept is filling your bucket. Oftentimes, you need to be aware of what fills your cup, what makes you feel good. Is it hugs? Is it intimacy? Is it gifts? Like, there could be so many different things that make you feel good. So fill your cup. I found this thing here that says being a parent is like folding a fitted sheet. No one really knows how. Which, at first I was like, wait, I don't really know how to fold a fitted sheet. I just ball it up and throw it in wherever it needs to be thrown into. So learn how to fill your cup. Find those things that makes you feel good. Okay. And these are my references. These are the awesome psychologists and the healthcare and other people who did a lot of this research, and you could definitely look up their work so that way you could have more information. And thank you so much. You're not alone. You're not a bad parent. We'll get through this. And if you need extra help, our offices are open. So just give us a call. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. It was awesome as always. All right, I am just going to pull up a couple questions that came in the Q&A. And if you have more questions, please feel free to keep typing them. We have about 15 minutes for questions. All right, so one parent says that she's wondering about strategies for finding patience, calm, and one more ounce of energy when the kids still need care. And she's thinking bedtime routines here, but she's exhausted and feels like she has nothing left to give. What do you say to a parent like that?
Oh man, that's a hard thing, because I think that's
Yeah,
something.
we've all been there, right?
Like the other day, we were like literally the other night, I was having that conversation with my wife, right? Finding that extra ounce. I think there's no easy answer to that. I wish, and I always tell everybody, just like, I wish I had like a magic pill, right? I could just say, hey,
Yeah, you don't have that magic pill?
I ran out.
Don't they give it to us at the hospital? It's all good.
You know, I, my magic pill guy hasn't returned my calls.
Different magic pills, but yeah.
The thing is that there is no magic pill to it. I think in the moment, when you do have the time to yourself, make use of that time. Don't allow that time to just kind of waste away. Don't, if you need to go to sleep, if you have a moment to just take that nap. If you could take joy in certain things, like for example bedtime, you're trying to get your child to go to sleep, and try to make it as fun as possible, but not too fun, because then you're going to get them stimulated and then they're going to wake up again. But try to make it as entertaining as possible in a way that's calming and soothing. Try to find, try to do trade-off with your partner. What I do is that with my wife is that there are certain parts of bedtime that I don't want to deal with, right? She wants to do cleanup. She loves it. You could do that. I'll actually put the child, I could do that very easily. You are able to clean up, you clean up, and sometimes we'll switch, or sometimes we'll have to do all of it. But then when we switch off and do other things, then it's possible. But not, even if we don't have partners and we're stuck, and you end up doing it yourself, which is a difficult thing, and it happens. I think honestly, when you do have that moment, just take care of yourself. Do something specifically designed to care for you. right?
So are you telling me that like scrolling for 30 minutes on Twitter is maybe not the best use of some downtime?
Listen, as long as it's not like a complete habit, but if it makes you happy, okay. But
I
you know,
think it doesn't make me happy.
yeah,
They call it doom scrolling for a reason.
for example, like there's one thing where people do it because it's like an escapism, right? You're trying to kind of like run away, and other people do it where it's like you just needed a couple minutes to just scroll through your feed and find out what happened today. you know,
Totally.
It-
Totally. No, that's true. I mean, you catch up with like just news in the world, but I think I'm specifically thinking about those times where you're just kind of exhausted and you have 10 minutes to yourself and it's almost like it's too exhausting to think of something more healthy to do, I think. So you end up spending that 10 minutes doom scrolling instead.
yeah,
So I think that one thing that has helped me in the past, I'm not always so good at actually making it happen, but I'm trying to kind of create a bank for myself in a good moment of like, what are some things that I can pull out when I'm at the end of my rope and I just have 10 minutes and I need a refresher? Let me think now about what some of those things might be so that when the time comes, instead of resorting to Twitter or Facebook, I can be like, oh, yeah, there was that um cross stitch that I've been working on for 5 years or whatever. Let me cross stitch for 10 minutes or let me go out and prune my herb garden or something like that. So I feel like developing that bank in advance has been a little helpful for me.
you know what I did, right?
Um
Sorry, I wanted to
yeah,
add something because so when I
yeah,
told
please.
the story in the beginning, right? After that night, I told my wife I'm buying a more comfortable chair for the baby's room because if I'm gonna spend all night there, I better be able to eat like a. So what I did, I went out, I got a comfortable chair, and I love audiobooks. So I have my headphones in, so which is why I love putting her to sleep because I have my headphones in, I'm holding her, and
Yeah,
I'm listening to my story. And those
yeah,
things, like it got to the point where like I'm like, it's time for bedtime. Where's my headphones? Right? Because I'm able to just do that with her. And then she's like, oh, she's gonna sleep. I put her down and I go about my business. And if she does have a bad night, I know I can sleep on that chair in perpetuity. So at
yeah.
this, those are
And
the
just those little things to increase your comfort are enough to kind of reduce that rage, right? That rage that like surges when you just want to sleep and then you can't problem solve, you can't soothe, your kid because you're just so upset. So just those little things. My strategy when I was in that scenario, Sam, was I was rewatching Game of Thrones. So I just I just put in headphones and I had my, phone nearby and I could, catch up in the latest episode. So that was just the little thing that I could do. But
definitely.
I was also struck by what you said earlier about, that client who would say, "Oh, I know these strategies for staying calm in the moment." And that when the time came and they were actually able to pull it out and say deep breathe or something during the moment and said, "Oh, that just gave me that little ounce of extra space that I could keep it together." And sometimes I think that's really important for everyone to keep in mind that sometimes all you need is just that little extra inch or centimeter even. And sometimes that's all it is. You're not necessarily going to be your calm and your calmest, best parenting self, but sometimes just that little bit of breathing space is enough to, keep you from losing it on your kids.
Yeah,
That's the good enough part of it, I think, that you were talking about.
yeah.
All right. Someone else said, when's it okay to be in a bad mood in front of your kids? How do you find space to allow yourself to feel your emotions? And that she feels like so much of her struggle is feeling like she's repressing her emotions and it builds up.
Yeah. That's again another tricky question, right? Because again, you want to be able to. What I say is, depending on the age of your child and how you go about it. Sometimes I'll even say to my own daughter, or I have other parents say to their child, Daddy's not okay right now. Daddy's having a hard time. And sometimes when daddy has a hard time, he needs to do things to help him feel better. So I kind of start to verbal now. She's too young to get it, but I can imagine as a child who's a little bit older, who's seeing that you're just not in a good mental space, to be able to verbalize that and to kind of have them sit with you and says, can you think of ways? Like I can imagine if I can you help think of ways? What do you do to make yourself feel better? It's like
That's cool.
I like to eat ice cream. I was like, ice cream? I was like, it is kind of late, but you know what? Maybe that's what we need to do, right? And like I make it sound simple or I make it sound like thing, but it's never an easy thing because the reason I say it is that in that moment when you're not in a good mood, the first thought is, oh my God, they see me not in a good space. I'm a bad parent. And the truth is, you are not the first parent who's been in a bad mood in front of their child.
Right.
Period.
Right.
If the child doesn't see different emotions come off of you, I guarantee they will have a hard time in the future understanding other people's emotions.
Yeah.
But it's how you
Plus being able to watch you recover from it too is also extremely helpful and a fantastic teaching moment.
yeah. And if you get to a place where you're in a bad mood and you know you can't come out of this bad mood, this is when you call on your resources, right? When I say resources, you call on people you trust, you call on your partner, you call on friends, family, whoever you know. Because if you know you're in one of those bad moods that's not going to get better in 10 minutes or an hour or a day, then you might need to call for extra help and you might need to get extra help because those things are really important. Because it's one thing to be in a space because sometimes you get angry. People get angry. People get frustrated. I've seen it. My parents are Caribbean, so they get angry, right? And they're not afraid to show me their anger. Same time, I had to learn like, oh, I could now know when somebody's angry. And I also am not terrified when somebody's angry because I've been around people who have been angry and not angry in this kind
Yeah.
of super aggressive manner, but yeah, I didn't pick up the dishes. What happened? Like I've been around that. So those are skills that I've learned. Not to say that you need to do that to your kids, but by seeing those different sides of you, but being able to repair or being able to say, hey, I wasn't in a good mood, but guess what I did? I was able to do these exercise. Would you like to do it with me? Oh, don't you feel
Yeah.
great? Yeah, I feel amazing.
Yeah.
Better. And those are the things that help. Stop not
Talking through it.
repressing isn't the best way to go about things because then what happens is that you kind of bottle it up and then it becomes a Coca-Cola and then and a Coca-Cola you put a Mentos in and then now it explodes and then now you don't even have a bottle and we don't want that. We want you to have a bottle. We want you
That was a good metaphor. Well,
to,
so you were talking about bringing in help, and that's definitely something that came up in the questions a lot too. Is how do you allow other people to help? So I will say that I am definitely a control freak, and especially early on. So I have 3 kids. My oldest is 13, and like especially in the early stages of my oldest, you know, I always did it the right way, and my husband, never did it as good as I could. So over time, it built up so that I was doing more, and he wasn't feeling as competent at it because he wasn't getting as much practice, and I was probably criticizing him. So, how do you build up the tolerance for allowing people to help you, even if they're not going to do it as good as or different from the way that you would do it?
I think that's tricky, right? I think that goes down to perfection. It goes down to a lot of different beliefs that you may have. Like, I'm the only one who can make this right. I'm the only one
Yeah.
who can fix this problem. I'm the only one who could do X, Y, and Z. And you know what? The truth is, you are not the only one. And I think
Yes, I am. No, I
no,
really am.
you are not the only, and there's like there's more than one way to skin a cat. All right, so I'll give you another example, and maybe it's my wife. tends to make fun of me because when I clean the dishes, I get everything wet. The floor is wet, everything is wet. She can't understand how I get everything wet. I can't understand how I get everything wet. But in the end, I clean the dishes, I clean the
The
floor,
dishes are done.
right? And in her
Yeah.
head, she's like, you must be doing it in the wrong way. But eventually she had to be like, listen, the dishes are clean. And it's not like I'm walking into a wet place. He's cleaning everything in the end. So while yes, I could be better with my ability to clean these dishes, but the fact is, you're able to say, if I don't have to worry about the dishes, then now I could worry about something else. If I don't have to worry about this, I could worry about something else. Maybe it's not going to be to the standard that I want. Then what is an appropriate standard? What is okay with you? And if you're finding it really hard to let go, then it's not necessarily about that thing that needs to be done in that way. It's about your feelings in that thing. There must be a feeling that's attached to it. Where is it coming from? Is it coming from the idea that as you're growing up, your family said it has to be done this way? And if it's not done this way, or maybe you grew up where everybody was, free and everything is what it is. And then you're like, no, it can't be that way. So now you're like, everything has to be structured. The extremes. The problem is the extremes. That's where you find a problem. When you start to go towards the middle, then everything seems to balance out. But when you start to find yourself in the extremes, you can't even see my hands. And that's where the problem lies. So you want to get to a place where you can see the hands. And then realize, yes, my wife wants it a certain way, but she knows the plates are clean. And I've learned to make sure to clean up after myself afterward. And that way, everybody's happy. I hope it's a good example.
I think there's a lot that has to do with building up tolerance for uncertainty and for the good enough parenting and all of that. So a lot of the unhelpful thoughts that you were pointing to earlier, the common parental beliefs and things, are they're hard, but the best way to tackle them is to get a little bit more tolerance for all the things that you think are not exactly perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we are out of time. Actually, that went really fast. Thank you so much, Sam. I know that we learned a lot. Thanks to everybody who came. Please come next month again on May 12th when Dr. Natasha Brown is going to be talking about is it autism, is it ADHD, is it anxiety, just the things that we know and don't know about these very common diagnoses. Always feel free to reach out to us at Small Brooklyn Psychology for help as you need to. And thanks as always to Park Slope Parents and Premier Pediatrics for helping to get the word out about our series. Thank you so much. Good night.